Apple just announced their first major product launch of the year, and today I want to show you everything they're going to be dropping on March 4th. There's a redesigned iPhone 17e, all new low-cost MacBook, refreshed iPads and other MacBooks, a new Apple display, and potentially some surprises too. So there's a lot just around the corner, but I want to start off by taking a look at the announcement invite because it's a little bit different than what we would typically see from Apple. The product drop is set for Wednesday, March 4th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. But notably, they're calling this an Apple experience and not an Apple event. So it's not going to be a full-on 2-hour keynote unveil. It sounds like these will be some press releases combined with small event videos, just like we saw for the iPhone 16e last year. And speaking of Apple's budget iPhone, the iPhone 17e is the first new product we will be seeing in March this year. The iPhone 17e is set to be a bigger upgrade than we initially expected, with Apple switching from the iPhone 14 chassis to the iPhone 15. Giving it more comfortable rounded edges and most notably a dynamic island up at the top instead of the notch. This will make the iPhone 17e blend in much better with the rest of the iPhone 17 lineup, but unfortunately the display size will remain at 6.1 inches and it's stuck at a 60 Hz OLED panel, so we are not getting 120 Hz ProMotion on Apple's budget iPhone, at least this year. Luckily, sources say that Apple is putting a much better selfie camera on here, actually the same 18 megapixel center stage option from the other iPhone 17 models. So front-facing photos and videos are getting a huge jump over the existing 12 megapixels. But the biggest upgrades from Apple's perspective are the new silicon inside. Starting with the processor, we're going from the A18 to the A19, which is a little bit faster and more efficient than last year. And then for cellular connectivity, Apple's upgrading the C1 to the C1X, which is something that we've already seen in the iPhone Air. And on top of that, the iPhone 17e will also get Apple's N1 wireless chip for the latest Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and Thread standards. So internally, this is actually going to be closer to a Pro model than ever before. However, the nicest quality of life improvement is that Apple is adding MagSafe back on the iPhone 17e. For whatever reason, that just wasn't present on the iPhone 16e and it confused everyone. So Apple is re-adding MagSafe with this latest budget model. Rumors also suggest that pricing is staying the same at $599, but it might include double the amount of base storage, going from 128 to 256. So pretty much across the board, the iPhone 17e is going to be a really compelling option. Following that, Apple's also been working on another budget product for the spring. Sources say the MacBook SE is coming in March, and this is going to be a new ultra low-cost MacBook priced between $600 and $700 with a colorful and fun design. Rumored colors include a light green, blue, and yellow. Coincidentally, the exact colors that Apple used on the event invite logo, so I'm sure that doesn't hint at the new MacBook at all, right? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Apple always teases stuff in the event invite, so this is just confirmation that this low-cost MacBook is coming on March 4th. Although so far, this doesn't really sound that budget, so where are the cuts happening? Well, the first part is the display. It's coming in at just 12.9 inches, which is the smallest screen Apple's put on a MacBook in a long time. And second is the processor on the inside. This will not have an Apple M series chip like all other Macs have had. This is going to recycle an iPhone chip, specifically the A18 Pro that we first saw appear in the iPhone 16 Pro. Now, I know that sounds like a big downgrade, but it really isn't. Actually, compared to Apple's M1 chip, the A18 Pro is based on a newer 3nm architecture. It has higher single-core performance, and the graphics are also a little bit better. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true, right? But with numerous independent sources corroborating all of these specs, this sub-$700 MacBook might be one of the best value products Apple has ever released. Of course, Apple will also tout that this low-cost MacBook keeps your data private and secure, but unfortunately, Apple's protections alone aren't enough to keep you and your data protected from these evil people known as data brokers that sell your stuff online. Turns out for a long time, these data brokers were selling my personal info without me even knowing, and that's why I partnered up with Incogni, who sponsored today's video. See, normally you would have to go through the trouble of reaching out to hundreds of data brokers individually, but Incogni works on your behalf to do all of the hard work for you. They actually give you this sick dashboard to keep track of all the requests that they've made, as well as details about who was selling your stuff. Plus, Incogni even supports custom data removal requests now. So if you find a certain link or piece of information out there about you, you can send it directly to Incogni and they will do everything in their power to get it taken down. So take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code AppleTrack at the link below to save 60% off an annual plan at Incogni. incogni.com/AppleTrack. A huge thank you to Incogni, as always, for keeping my private life private. Now, let's get back to the video. On top of that, there's actually some other MacBooks coming right around this time as well. In March, Apple is also planning to release new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. We've been waiting on these updates for a long time, but don't get too excited because they're going to be pretty minor. Well, Apple's planning a massive change later this year with a thinner chassis, OLED displays, touchscreen, and more. The MacBooks coming in March are just getting new processors. Apple's updating the current MacBooks with M5 Pro and M5 Max chips that'll be a little bit faster and quicker. I mean, some nice updates if you need to buy a MacBook right now, but if you can hold off, that MacBook Pro update coming in the second half of this year, that is going to be the one you want to get. Alongside this, rumors also say a new MacBook Air is imminent, and this is going to be a spec bump update, just with Apple swapping out the M4 for the M5 chip in pretty much the identical looking device that we've had for a few years now. However, with the M5 chip inside, we could see up to twice as fast SSD speeds, as this was a change that we saw when Apple put the M5 in the base MacBook Pro. And because M5 is more efficient, this MacBook Air could see battery life over 18 hours for the first time ever. So actually kind of a decent MacBook Air upgrade, although not super exciting. Sometimes though, you just want a bigger screen to get work done on, and that's where this third product comes in. Sources say that Apple's also getting ready to launch the Apple Studio Display 2, which is the long-awaited update to their entry-level monitor. And recently, the rumors for this have changed a lot. We initially expected a 120Hz display featuring Apple ProMotion, but now we're hearing it's only going to be 90Hz. That's right, two independent sources have now said that Apple is planning a mid-tier 90Hz display for the Apple Studio monitor instead of 120Hz, not actually because they want to save money, but for a more practical reason. Reporting suggests that Apple might not have the technical capability to push a 5K display at 120Hz continuously, because that is so many millions of pixels, even with the fast A19 Pro chip on the inside. Apple wouldn't have enough bandwidth to power the display and a number of peripherals. So instead, they've settled for this middle option, which will be way better than 60Hz, but not quite as good as their high-end refresh rate. Mainly, I'm just bummed because that makes sense, and I really wanted 120Hz, but hey, I mean, 90Hz, it is still an improvement over what we have now. That being said, the Studio Display 2 panel will support HDR for the first time, and it's likely Apple could transition away from LCD to a much more premium mini LED backlighting system, giving it a greater level of brightness and contrast. Following that, it's also typical that Apple drops new iPads in the spring, and they've got two new models that they have been working on. The first new iPad coming this March is an updated base model. That's the colorful $349 iPad that hasn't been touched in a minute. The central upgrade here is Apple putting a faster A18 chip inside, one that finally supports Apple Intelligence. So this will now enable Apple's full suite of AI features that were just previously unavailable on this product, and it's a little bit late coming, but cool. New chip in the iPad. There's really nothing else rumored for this device. As it's Apple's base model, they're kind of just keeping it where it's at. It's also going to be a similar story on the 2026 iPad Air, as Apple is just swapping the M3 chip for the faster M4, but with pretty much every other aspect of this device looking, working, and feeling the same. I mean, honestly, the more I think about the iPad Air, I don't really see how it exists in Apple's lineup. Considering it's called the Air, but is thicker than the Pros, that doesn't even logically go together. And in general, it sits in this strange middle ground between the Mini and the base and the Pro. And I think you're kind of better suited going in any other direction than the Air. The point I'm trying to make here is that an M4 chip in an iPad is not going to make this device all that more compelling. So it's just going to kind of continue to sit in the middle once again. All right, now up until this point in the video, the sources have a consensus on those products. That's what's coming in and around March 4th. But then there's some other stuff where the release dates aren't as clear. Primarily that Apple TV 4K with a faster chip. It is still rumored to be coming soon, but does not have a specific release date. They're not saying it is coming in March right now. The same can also be said for the HomePad, the touchscreen HomePod with a speaker on it. That was initially supposed to launch in March, but it sounds like it's gotten pushed back until April or May now. And unfortunately, same story again for the new HomePod Mini. Apple's giving this thing better sound quality, faster chip, but no sources say March. So that stuff is coming soon or never. I wish we had more specifics. And as far as everything else, new iPhones, higher-end Apple Watches, AirPods, Macs, Apple AR glasses, those are coming later in the year, so we'll talk about those when we get there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like down below. Seriously helps me and the channel out. And hit subscribe so you always stay up to date on more Apple news. I've been Sam. Hope you're doing well. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.